Welcome to Riding Counsel with Rich Jaffe, where the open road meets expert advice. I'm Richard Jaffe, an attorney and biking enthusiast, and this is the podcast where we dive into the world of motorcycling, safety, culture, charitable giving, and riding right. So, whether you're a seasoned rider or just getting started, let's talk bikes, the road, and everything in between. Let's ride! Deer, dogs, and disaster. When animals cause motorcycle crashes, who's really at fault? Can you sue one of these animals? I'm Rich Jaffe. I am a podcaster. I'm a motorcycle enthusiast, and I'm a motorcycle accident injury attorney. And I'm your host here at ridingcounsel.com, along with my friend, Million. How you doing, Million?
I'm doing well. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I always appreciate hanging out with you, talking motorcycle stuff, hanging with our audience. And I'm a little intrigued about suing animals. That's like maybe a big class action thing against like an entire herd. Is that? I guess we're going to get into that today.
You know, animal related motorcycle accidents, how you could protect yourself on the road and in court. I mean, I'm a dog lover. Do I want to sue my dog? I mean, look, it's kind of crazy. You know, it's crazy to think about this. Actually, I was on a ride. You know, I needed some mental clarity, and motorcycling just does wonders for me. I love it. So I'm cruising around, and there was some traffic out on the highway on the Long Island Expressway. And then as you get out further east, it breaks up. So I'm out there way out east, and the traffic is broken up. I'm in the right-hand lane. I'm about to get off an exit. And all of a sudden, this freaking huge hedgehog, I thought it was Cujo. It was like right there crawling. It was like right next to me. It looks like a cross between like a porcupine and a squirrel, but this thing was gigantic. I swear to God, I thought it was going to jump up and bite my neck, and I almost lost it. I almost really ate. Can I say shit here? I almost ate shit. I don't know if I could say that on my own podcast, but it was pretty scary.
Well, hang on a second. I could have swore I just heard you say hedgehog.
I think it's a hedgehog. I think that's what we have out here.
Okay.
Is it a hedgehog?
I don't know. I wasn't there. It
was a huge thing. It looked like it was not a porcupine, and it was not a raccoon. It was not a squirrel. This thing was monstrous, and it looked like like a chinchilla on testosterone or something. I don't know what the hell this thing was.
It's like Sonic the Hedgehog. Like
it could have been Sasquatch. I don't know.
Was he as fast as Sonic? Was he like really moving quick, or
but he was crawling towards me. And he was like getting ready. It looked like he was like timing me, you know, like because I was going like an undisclosed number of miles an hour. Yeah, and he's getting ready. He's gonna like jump and knock me off my seat. I had no idea what was happening, but anyway, wow. Look, I mean, I'm an animal lover, you know, but animals possess a certain quality. I don't think any of them carry insurance. So what can we do about this? You know, I mean, that's the question when animals are involved in motorcycle accidents, and it happens a lot, whether people get run over by deer or a dog runs out or, you know, even a cat or something like that. And I think there's a lot to talk about here.
Well, the dog would probably be the most hedgehog. I never would have expected that, but dog would be more my first guess as to what animal was running out. But so let's start there. If a dog runs out to the road and a rider hits that dog in the road, technically who's legally responsible? Let's start there.
Right. Okay. So let's be real. Okay. Dog runs into the road. We're not going to sue the dog. Okay. But just because an accident involves an animal like a dog, let's just not think, okay, well, you know, it was something like an act of God, or, you know, I can't sue the dog, and so I'm out of luck. You actually do have rights. And let me explain. If this is a dog, most of the time, somebody has this dog. Somebody's the owner of the dog, and you can't just sue because you're the owner of the dog. But there are other things that happen that make the owner responsible. For example, let's say the dog is off a leash and is, you know, known to run, or even not known to run. It's prudent. It's responsible to keep a dog on the leash so they don't run out into the street or they don't cause a problem with another dog. And failure to do so is actually, or at least can be, an act of negligence on behalf of the owner. And if not the owner, then let's say somebody hires a dog walker, you know, they're on vacation or something like that, and the dog walker doesn't use a leash, or the dog walker doesn't use proper precautions, maybe uses the wrong kind of collar or something like that. yeah, that's negligent if the dog runs away because you're using a collar that's too big. So, there are situations where you can sue somebody. I mean, I'll give you another situation. Let's say the dog is usually kept in the yard and you made the yard really safe, but you know what? Uh-oh, I forgot to close the door of the yard and the dog escapes. The dog runs into the road. And even if you don't hit the dog or the dog doesn't hit you, but you're avoiding the accident because the dog is in the road. Yeah, that's negligence. That's somebody doing something wrong. Don't leave the door open because the dog can escape. And honestly, that's a foreseeable thing. I mean, we all have to be responsible. We all have to act reasonable. And closing the door to your yard where you keep your dog is something that reasonable people do. So,
All right, let's look at a couple caveats here then. So someone's walking their dog, big dog, everything's right, leash, collar, everything's. Let's say the dog sees a hedgehog and decides to go run after it, and maybe overpowers the owner. Just their big strong dog pulls out of their hand and gets loose. In a case like that, is it still negligence or is that more accidental? Where do we fall there?
well, there's different ways to look at it, okay? Because if it's a dog where you really should have known that this dog has strength that can pull away from you and start chasing an animal, well, yeah, you should have known that this dog can do that. So if you're walking, let's say, a small breed like a Shih Tzu, right? The Shih Tzus maybe grow to be like 10 pounds, let's say. That kind of dog is not going to overpower you. But just by looking at a dog, if you have a Rottweiler or a pit bull or an English bulldog, a French bulldog, I mean, these, I don't know if you've ever seen these, but bulldogs, they don't have any chins. They're all neck. It's just one gigantic neck and a ball of muscle. So if you look at that kind of dog and saying, yeah, he's never done this before, just because he hasn't done this before doesn't mean he can't. So you really have to be aware of what your dog can do and be a responsible owner. So yeah, there definitely could be negligence there.
Wow. Could you sue the dog if it's like, like that ugly thing in Men in Black movie, or, like Beethoven, like if it's a famous dog? I mean, could that be done? I mean, they got some cash apparently.
Yeah, if the dog has its own bank account, perhaps.
Okay.
I've known a lot of dogs that impersonate men and women. I've seen a lot of women who look like dogs.
Yes.
And let's be honest, we don't even know if it's a dog or a cat. People impersonate these things, like they identify as a cat. So if they're identifying as a cat, you could sue them. If they're identifying as a dog or they look like a dog, you should be able to sue them because they look really bad. So
I mean, we're
that's a
looking for
possibility.
details here. We're trying
Yeah,
to drill
we
down
need to
and-
know. It's definitely, it's going to be a public opinion. What I would suggest in that situation, if there's really somebody extremely ugly, to take their picture, throw it up on Facebook and take a poll. And if they're that ugly, if they look like a dog, yeah, you could sue them.
And we can crowdfund the attorney fees through
Yeah.
one of
Yeah.
those GoFundMe or something. I don't know.
Yeah, they don't belong. They don't belong. So
Okay, now let's look at the other side. So if you're a rider, and let's say you I know could have or couldn't have, you're in a kind of a weird situation. The thing we talked about before of the comparative negligence, could a rider be held negligible in some way in this?
okay, well, that's definitely a factor. But let me just, the show is also about motorcycle law and, safety and things like that. So if there is a dog that you're approaching that is barking and sort of chasing the bike, understand, and this is actually one of my prior episodes where I help people try to pass the written portion of your exam for a motorcycle endorsement on your license. But what you're supposed to do is you're actually supposed to drive towards the dog, which will like sort of freeze him in his tracks. And then as you get closer to the dog, then go speed away. So just a point of reference there. In any event, culpable conduct or some sort of comparative negligence, as again, I went over that in another episode. But yes, riders can actually be contributorily negligent to their own injuries if they don't act right around an animal that escapes. So I just described the proper way to handle a dog out on the street. If you do something different, like if you slow down and you like tip over because you totally stop, that's really not the right thing to do. And, a jury can come back and say, why didn't you follow Rich's advice and the advice of the AMA, American Motorcycle Association, and the advice of people who train you how to ride a motorcycle in handling a dog, like that? Yeah, You really
You
have to
literally
know.
answered the question on the test of what to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they test you on this stuff, and they test you for a reason, because a lot of times this happens, and you have to be careful. I'm a dog lover, okay? And as an owner, I try to be responsible, and people make mistakes, and that's okay, because we're all human. People are going to make mistakes, but it's also important to have insurance, because you have to realize that people make mistakes.
So when we get into, let's say, like a homeless dog, a wild dog, or even like wild things like deer, for instance, livestock that's not owned, I guess, wild animals, you would call it,
Yeah. Yeah.
strays in that
Right.
case. We have like a no fault. Is it you're just SOL, no luck for you? Like what happens in those cases?
I've I've had several friends who actually got hit by a deer, and not like small deer, not like doe, not like Bambi, but these things are huge, right?
Yeah.
Because I've seen pictures of them. They take pictures of them,
Mhm.
but they will crush a motorcycle. They would literally crush a motorcycle, and with devastating circumstances and consequences. So, can you sue the deer? No, no, of course not. But there may be an action against the municipality, whether that be the state, the county, or whatever, because if there's a lot of wildlife activity in a certain area, and signs are not properly posted, or the appropriate remedies were not taken to somehow steer the animals in a natural environment away from the roadway, there might be some liability. Or if those things existed and there's like a big hole in a fence that's maintained by the municipality,
Mm.
well, yeah, if the municipality knew or could and should have known that the fence or whatever else they're using to steer the animals away from the road is broken and needs repair, you got yourself a case. So just because you get hit by a deer, don't just think, oh, it's in the wild. There's things you could do, not only on the road, like I described, to avoid an accident, but also to protect yourself, and exercise your rights against people who may be responsible for the accident, even though it's caused by an animal.
So, in that same vein, when we talk about the municipality maintaining fences or gates or anything like that, so if somebody has a private farm, cattle area, something like that, same situation, except now it's a private property thing. And, someone's cow walks out into the street, you hit them. I guess you have now some kind of case against that, farm, that dairy, that cattle farm, whatever it is, because they have a duty to maintain that at all times, especially given those circumstances.
100%. 100%. I mean, there you see electric fences all the time. That's one thing they can do. I mean, fences are popular, but I've also seen where they have dogs running around. They have their own dogs running around to try to
Yeah.
herd up
Mhm.
certain cattle. So, and, of course, this is probably, we're talking more popular out west, maybe in Nebraska or Arkansas or something like that,
Mhm.
where you see more farms like this. But they have it on Long Island too. There's one place where they actually keep bison, and it's all fenced in. But you also have to maintain that fence. So it's not enough just to put up a fence. You can't just put up a fence and leave it. You have to maintain the fence. You have to inspect. You have to be a reasonable property owner, a reasonable farm owner. And if you don't, and one of these animals escape, well, yeah, you can definitely be held liable.
What happens in a case where, let's say, there's the cow in the street or the dog or anything like that? You swerve to avoid them, but you don't make contact, but still end up crashing. What happens in those situations?
Okay, so this is really interesting, because you don't necessarily have to make contact with an animal in order to have some sort of liability for the accident on behalf of the owner of the animal. If the animal acts in such a way that causes you to swerve, and then you hurt yourself as a result, then you still may have an action lie against the owner of that animal, or somebody who may be responsible.
Sorry about
So, you really have to analyze all the circumstances of what's going on, and don't write it off just because it's some sort of animal that maybe escaped or you think is wild. You really have to take a look at all of the facts of the situation.
So, in a case like that, I guess you're kind of stuck with things like eyewitness testimony, or I would assume in motorcycles you have some kind of like, I don't know, dash cam, or like I don't know how cams work on in that particular case, like a helmet cam or something. I would guess that something like that would make a huge difference in proving what had happened, especially if you could hold someone liable. So that's probably a good thing to have.
Yes, 100%. So, the thing about dash cams is, well, a lot of people do wear them on their helmets and they wear them on the top of the helmets. But
Mm.
the problem with that is there's lots of laws and local ordinances that allow police officers to pull you over and say, look, this is obstructive and somehow you're not allowed to have anything attached to your helmet. So they do sometimes try to use that law to pull you over, and then they try to make a big mess of things because a lot of times, police officers don't really like motorcycles. And I understand where they're coming from because a lot of motorcycles don't have license plates or they don't have insurance, and a lot of people get hurt unnecessarily. I get that part. But there also is the advent of dash cams on motorcycles, and they've actually come a long way. So if you go shopping for some, they have some really cool ones that operate by Bluetooth and otherwise,
Oh,
that one camera points to the forward and one camera points backward, and it's recording all the time. So if you have the chance to do that, it will definitely save you in certain circumstances. And you know I mean, identifying the animal, if it runs away, that's a problem. You know, when you're run over by an animal or crash from an animal, that's not like the very first thing you're thinking about, in the first like 5 seconds of going down on the road and eating gravel. So having a dash cam certainly helps.
so is that true? Separate note on that police aren't real crazy about motorcycles. Is that like a thing?
There's all kinds of lawyers, let's say. Okay, there's good lawyers and bad lawyers. Okay.
Mm.
One of my goals, one of my values here in the system, is to raise the standard of practice of law, especially personal injury law, both inside the courtroom and out. But there's bad lawyers, and just like that, there's police officers who are not such nice people, and the majority are good people. And if they have a job to do, they're going to do it. But many people think that there is a prejudice that lies with police officers that pull over motorcycles all the time, as opposed to cars. But there's arguments on both sides, right? I mean, you don't see them doing that with regular cars. They just pick out motorcycles, and
Hmm.
then they do a equipment check. But if they do see you with a camera attached on the top of your head, and it's really a glaring thing, they could pull you over because they could check your equipment, because there's lots of laws against having something attached to your helmet that may somehow impede motorcycle traffic or something different. I'm not really sure. So it really depends upon the police officers themselves. I personally have only had good interactions with police officers with my motorcycle, so they've been very kind with me, and they also try to educate me whenever they have a chance.
Because I would imagine that, clearly a police report can do a lot for you in determining negligence, especially with your insurance company. So that's why I was kind of curious if they carried some, inherent bias maybe that would, cause you some trouble in these situations. I was just kind of curious about that.
Yeah, overall, I would say no, but you never know who you're going to run into. Of course, you can make situations worse when you start arguing with the police or you do something to instigate the police officer. You're not, it kind of reduces your chances of getting a report that's going to help.
In motorcycle cases, like motorcycle insurance specifically, do they have any sort of like part of their policy or riders that cover collisions with animals? Is that a thing in there
You
too?
know, it's not, well, yes and no. Okay. So the lawyerly answer is it depends. So if you're considering something like collision coverage as part of your insurance against being hit by an animal, then the answer is yes. Because if your motorcycle is damaged in any way, then that part of the policy really has to cover you. I mean, notwithstanding you committing a crime or something like that, they're not going to cover you. But if you wake up one morning and your motorcycle is vandalized, well, yeah, they're gonna cover that. Same thing with a deer. If a deer basically runs you over, knocks you over, and your motorcycle is in pieces, you're covered for that. You're covered by that.
So I guess that falls under the umbrella of the comprehensive when you get that kind of stuff, because that would be considered a comprehensive thing. Yeah.
Right. Right. Right.
And then just so the listeners and viewers, so they know, if they have an insurance policy, you're open to reviewing that for them, right?
I do a lot of things for free, and that's one of the things I do for free. Is if you have an insurance policy, then if you send it to me and call me up, and you can actually get me at ridingcounsel.com. It's ridingcounsel.com. You punch it up, and there's a click to talk. Send me your insurance policy, and I will be happy to review it for free. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of times people go online and they will secure insurance for their motorcycle online, but you don't know exactly what you're doing. And that's not your fault. It's really the insurance company's fault because they don't explain things and they try to gear you towards the cheapest thing possible for them, not for you. Okay. Or you're thinking yourself, okay, look, I want to spend the least amount of money as possible because all insurance coverage is the same. It's not the same. Okay. There's places where you could save money and there's places where you could really protect yourself. So give me a call and I'm happy to talk to you for free. And I also have some free giveaways if anybody is interested in that too. I
We
give
love
away
free here. So what you got?
right. I give away shirts. I give away emergency lights. I give away tire repair kits. I give away, and I give away a lot. So I do this stuff for free. All this stuff for free. So if you want a free consultation, you give me a call. You want something for free like emergency lights, give me a call, hit me up, put a comment below. That's really fine. So what I'd also really like is if you like the content here, please do me a favor. Hit the like button, smash the subscribe button, and share this to all your friends because I really need it. And listen to some prior stuff because I have a lot of episodes out now, and maybe something's there that will help you as a writer. And I've interviewed a lot of interesting guests, so take a look at my other episodes too.
So if you're in an accident with a wild animal, someone you can't technically hold liable somewhere, you can still get compensation from your insurance through your comprehensive claims, right? You can get something out of this, right?
Right.
I mean, your rates are going to go crazy, but you can get something.
Right. So if an animal is somebody other than your ex-wife or your ex-girlfriend, and it's a real animal, like four-legged animal or something, you're going to be covered by comprehensive. Okay. And that's for your property damage. Okay. But it's not going to happen with uninsured or underinsured motorists. You're really not going to get anything for your pain and suffering. Okay. Keep that in mind, unless you can have a theory of liability against somebody who might be responsible for why that animal was in the road. Like hedgehogs, like I was talking about earlier in the episode here, probably not a problem. It's probably more of a part of nature, and it's not such a problem that the municipality took some sort of steps to protect the road from. But if the municipality did exercise their responsibility to put up fences, let's say, to prevent deer from running on the road so much because there's been so many accidents on the road, and they fail to maintain that fence, well, yeah, you got yourself a case. So you really have to do a proper investigation. You have to find a lawyer who's going to go spend the money for a proper investigation and look into the facts and details of the accident, not just say, hey, look, I got run over by a deer. So call me and discuss it. It's free, and I can answer all questions.
If you're driving through an area that's known to be somewhat high risk, like if there's actually those yellow signs that say livestock crossing or animal crossing, does that, and you still end up hitting an animal, does that take some of the onus off of them and make you more liable? I mean, because you're supposed to be, in control of your vehicle at all times,
right?
And you're being warned. So how does the high risk areas work if you're in the countryside or near farmlands or something like that?
Certainly. Well, that goes to the contributory negligence thing, right? So a biker could be responsible for his or her own accident. So if you see warning signs that say, hey, there's some danger here, be careful, keep your eyes open and maybe slow down, and you don't slow down, well, that's actually speeding. Okay. If you look at the law, at least in New York, it says that you are allowed to travel the speed limit. Okay. That's the limit. Doesn't mean that that's what you have to travel, but that's the limit of the highest speed that you can go. But you're not supposed to go at a high and or excessive rate of speed for the conditions then and there existing. And I think that's the actual legal language. And what that basically means is if the conditions are such that you cannot travel the speed limit, then don't. So if it's raining, let's say, okay, you got to exercise caution. Don't go the speed limit because that's probably not prudent. If you see one of these signs that say there's cattle crossing, there's turtle crossing, there's dog crossing, there's wild ex-girlfriends crossing, or maybe you want to hit your ex-girlfriend.
That's a rough zone to go through, man.
Yeah, bad, very bad. But if there's signs up there warning you, like, there's some danger up ahead, that's the time to slow down. So don't go the speed limit. Go slower. Have some sense. Bikers have a responsibility too. So but it's my responsibility to probably wrap this up now because it's about all the time we're going to have for this session of Riding Counsel. But before we go, people, do me a favor. I just want to remind you, smash the like button, do the subscribe, and share and listen to my prior episodes. It really helps me. And if you want to see some content specifically that is geared towards your situation, then leave a comment. I respond to all comments, good or bad. I'll take any kind of feedback you have. I'm open to that, and I have a pretty thick skin.
Leave a comment below. Don't forget, let us know if you've had encounters with animals, if you've hit an animal, if you've been through this. Leave your comments down below, and we will definitely address it in a future episode and follow up, and definitely let us know.
All right. Until then, listen, really appreciate everyone listening. Million thanks a lot for joining me on this. Kind of bizarre, but you can't sue an animal, but there's different things that you could do to make your life a little better if you are hurt, and it's the result of an animal getting in the road. So we'll talk more about some strange situations that unfortunately are becoming a little more popular in future episodes. But until now, everybody, stay wild, stay free, stay safe, but do so legally. Take care, everybody. And that's a wrap for this episode of Riding Counsel with Richard Jaffe. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the ride, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your fellow riders. Until next time, keep the rubber side down and ride safe.